Hey everybody, I'm Darren. This is my wife Lisa. I think you can see one of our dogs. Her name's Greta. This is where it all started 30 years ago in our living room that had no furniture. We moved in after 2 years of marriage, kind of unexpectedly forced from our parents, right? To say, hey, we should buy a house. This is where it started. Our living room, we had 8 people the first time we got together. What you can't see is the shape of our house, that when we grew from 8 to 30 people, we had Glenn with I think it was a 64 key Casio keyboard with no external speakers, set up just in front of me, probably where the camera is right now, and would lead worship. And then Norm would teach from that same corner, because off to my right, through the hallway there, was a dining room that also had no other furniture. So when we outgrew the living room, we could kind of set up people where Norm could see to his left and to his right and teach to people that couldn't see each other. But one of the things that I'd love to share is that although this was the first service, the impetus behind New Hope starting actually happened about 25 feet that way in our bedroom, when I got a call from Norm one night, somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning, when the phone was still attached to the wall. My phone rang, and important to the story is we had just finished reading a book about a church that was a brand new church somewhere between Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas. It was called Bear Valley or Bear Valley Creek. I'm not sure, and I can't remember the name of the book. But the whole impetus behind, Norm saying at that phone call, when he called in the middle of the night and said, Darren, I think I know what I'm going to do. And I finished his sentence and I said, you're going to start a church. And he said, yes, we're going to start a church. So one of the phrases, actually the only phrase that I can remember in this book, was that this pastor set out to start a church that would invite people who would never normally darken the door of a church. So phrases that are very common now that weren't 30 years ago were seeker friendly, seeker sensitive, all of those types of things that were really important, and they were cutting edge. And that was really the starting point of what New Hope Fellowship was and is today. And so we would just like to congratulate New Hope Fellowship for 30 years of continuous service. We're excited that it started here, but that it has grown to be so many other things. And we're excited to be part of your 30-year celebration.
Well, I'm here in the Armory, and this is one of the facilities we used many years ago for church. Although we started, my family's been attending New Hope since we were at the North Carroll Community Center, which is a very small room. Then we began services in multiple schools. I believe we went to Hampstead School, moved to William Winchester, East Middle, back and forth depending on what season of the year it was, and then we finally ended up here at the Armory. Unfortunately, I can't remember what year that was, but I do know it was quite a while ago. And the interesting thing about our church is, when you're a church having services in schools, anytime you would mention that to friends or family, they kind of, what, you have church in a school? That's kind of odd. So when we came to the Armory, it kind of was more of a stable place. We were able to have service here, much more space for people to attend, and we were in the heart of the city, which was very attracting to hopefully attract locals that came by, which it did. I can remember being a greeter out in the front. It looks like a castle out here, but we would hang our banner each week that had New Hope, identifying ourselves as a church. And it was a lot of interesting times here. The summertime, we'd had to set up these big fans. They were very noisy. It was kind of distracting. I even remember, it's interesting how we used to do the words for the music. It was on an overhead projector. I remember Jeremy always up there flipping the pages. So we did that for many years as well. It's just amazing how technology's changed. And then you can see behind me the stage here with all the weights. Each morning we would have to get here, at least a couple hours early before service, pulling a trailer full of equipment. We'd have to move all this exercise equipment. Even downstairs, we'd have to move exercise equipment around and set up for classrooms. I remember during the week, the praise team would have to practice upstairs. Even Sunday school classes would be upstairs, and just the amount of work that went into having church here as our home. It was a lot. And then loading the trailer every week, we would have to take rotations. Who would pull the trailer, bring it back each week. It was a long day on services, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of good fellowship. It's as much work as it was enjoyable just to build the relationships each week with the friends that we had here. And it's just, it's coming in here today. It's been years since I've been here. There's a lot of good memories. And I was asked to give a God moment. And, and I would like to say precisely something amazing that happened, but I can just say there's always God moments. God's been working in my life through this church for many, many years, and I know He's worked multiple times in so many other lives in our church. And that's the one thing I love about New Hope. That's why we stay a part of this church. It's an amazing family, and just love seeing how God works in the lives of this church. And I'm just grateful to be a part of it all these years. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren and I'm standing at 1129 Business Parkway South, Suite, I think we had E and F. This is where New Hope was located after a long season of us being in so many different schools. We were in a gym, and we came to this place when it was first being built. And the opportunity that New Hope had was to completely design and build the inside of our church with our first ever stage and our own chairs, our own nursery, bathrooms, offices, all kinds of beautiful things in here. It was an extremely exciting time for New Hope to actually come into a building that we designed for our ministries. We did not buy this building. We rented it for between 12 and 14 years. The reason that we moved from this is because we did end up dwindling in our congregation, but also the rent got extremely high, and it was really hard for us to pay that much money as God's stewards of the offerings that we were receiving. So then we hit the road again. But the beautiful God things that happened here at New Hope were just amazing. We came here with Pastor Norm Smith, our founding pastor. He was here, I know, probably in this building, I would think for around 8 or 9 years, I believe. We grew over 500 people. We had 2 services and a Wednesday night worship type of Bible study service here. We had, I think, between 5 to 6 people on staff. We would run missions trips. We had youth here that were growing because we had a full-time youth pastor. Glenn Willett was here as our associate pastor, and he helped me with worship. And this place has a special meaning to me because I was actually hired to be on staff when we moved in here. So the beauty that I see and the God moments that I see at being at this business park as part of our history is God's faithfulness for sure. We grew and God blessed us in ministry, and we were able to bless the communities that we served. But it also gets a little messy with people too, and we did lose our pastor, Norm. He resigned, and then we hired Pastor Bill Rumbaugh as our interim pastor, and then he became staff part-time and then full-time as well. And then we ended up moving and going back to Carroll Lutheran School. But God is faithful. It's like family. You have your ups and your downs, but it's beautiful.
Hi, I'm Matt Griffin. My family and I have been coming to New Hope for about 24 years. Many of you know my wife, Jenny. She works with the kids and my children, Grace, Faith, and Joy, help with the kids department as well. We're standing here in front of Carroll Lutheran School, where New Hope's been a season here. And God's timing supplied this place when we decided the rent was too high at the air park. In God's timing, we came here. Many good seasons and a couple rough ones along the way as well. And in God's providence, He showed His will and grace through that. And with Dave Dent's leadership, we then transferred and bought Rupp's Mill property. He was influential in that process and really showed strong leadership through the whole operation. And his desire that New Hope wanted a new home, its own home for years. And he was able to help us achieve that. And over the 30 years that New Hope has been in existence, we've seen God's grace in many opportunities and a lot of changes New Hope has gone through. One thing that has not changed in those 30 years is God's timing, deliverance, and His sovereignty. And also just our need for His acceptance of His gift of His death, burial, and resurrection, that with the acceptance of that, we get to have eternal life. And we're very appreciative of His timing and His will. And we thank Him and all the pastors and all the people who have served New Hope over the years.
Well, hey, New Hope, we're celebrating 30 years of ministry here in Carroll County. I'm here with a special guest that I would love for you to hear from and be able to share a little bit about who he is and his kind of really neat and cool connection here to New Hope. So, can you introduce yourself and who your dad is?
My name is Tyler Smith, and my dad was Norm Smith.
Awesome. So your dad, Tyler, he planted and founded New Hope. So what was his kind of desire in planting a church here in Carroll County?
I just think he always had the desire. From when I was young, I knew him, and he just always wanted to be involved in the church, just building something. And I think when it came time to kind of get that calling to build his own church, he jumped at it, and it was in a basement. So
Very cool. So what were some of his hopes and dreams as he led New Hope and built New Hope, kind of from the basement onward? What were some of those dreams and hopes?
I mean, this is the very cliche answer, but I think he wanted to see as many people come to Jesus as possible, you know, where it was in a basement where there was a few people, and then it grew to, you know, a larger building, and that obviously gives you more opportunity to preach to more people.
Awesome. And so for him, was there a moment or highlight as you reflect back on those founding years, first few years here at New Hope, that highlight during his time that was kind of one of those God moments where clearly this was a God moment and you could just see it all over?
Yeah, I mean, there's a good amount, but I think when we were in the basement renting, and then you finally get your own building, and you're like, okay, it kind of like legitimizes what you've been doing and kind of makes it seem like it was worth it, I guess, all the basement years. I keep saying the basement, but yeah, I definitely think that. And there's some missions trips where we went over to Kentucky and stuff like that and met with some people that, you know, they don't get a lot of love over that way, you know, in the mountains. But I think when you see that, you're like, man, we're doing something here, you know.
There was fruit of the ministry.
Yeah.
It was just seeing good things. So Tyler, could you share one thing to the current congregation, because not all of us knew Norm. Some of us here were there in the beginning, others have come along the way. But what is one thing you could share with us to know a little bit about Norm that you would want for us to know him by?
I think there's two things. Number one, he really, really liked basketball. So we would play a lot of basketball, and we watched a lot of movies, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. We won't talk about that. I had a Star Wars shirt on originally, okay? But I think that the serious one would be that he was the same. From what I saw, he was the same out in the church that he was behind closed doors. And I think we're seeing stories that sometimes those don't connect with some people. And I think that was what drew people to him, was like, okay, I see him there, and he's the exact same outside of that. So I think that's what I would have people know, is it was the same person.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Just the fact that he started us 30 years ago in the basement, moved around quite a bit, but just really to share the gospel in Carroll County and bring people in, and just the fact that that consistency factor of you are who you are at church and you are who you are outside the walls.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate your time, Tyler. Thanks for sharing just a little
Absolutely.
bit about Owen and your dad, and appreciate really the foundation that he's laid for us and the shoulders that we stand on his shoulders as we go forward. So
Appreciate you having me.
appreciate that.